Good afternoon and welcome to the new PI session. We are so happy to see you. We made the modification to exit out of the webinar interface and go towards the traditional Zoom meeting so that we at least could see your faces. But we certainly ask that during this time, you remain on mute and continue to utilize the chat box to engage. That would be great. I did see a question to come through asking if this was just for the new PIs. That is certainly who our identified audience is, but any seasoned PIs who would like to stick around and at least help to give context where appropriate, you're more than welcome to do so. We did want to bring to your attention that also during this time are presentations from other PIs. So if you find that you have interest in listening to those other PI presentations, feel free to do so. And then of course, we'll follow up after this with the session from our Division of Grants and Agreements. Sounds good? Awesome. And I also want to say no pressure on showing your faces, right? So anyone who is more comfortable with keeping your video off, we are certainly flexible. We understand that that just works at times and you're more than welcome. And if you haven't seen in the chat box, sometimes it's helpful to also include a hyphen and kind of the acronym for your institution that will, I know, help me start to put names and faces with the PIs as well as the institution that they're from. Or you can do as Dawn just did and use a virtual background that shows shows your institution as well. We certainly appreciate that. And so this session again is targeted towards the new PIs, and as we did yesterday, we really see this meeting as your meeting. And so while we have kind of a list of topics that we wanted to address, we also want to make sure that we hear from you. We're addressing any questions that you may have as new PIs to ensure your success in implementing the award. Michelle, did you have any comments before we begin?
Other than welcome everyone, it's so good to see all of you. Some of your faces I know, some I don't. But I'm really happy that you came to our first virtual meeting, and I'm hoping that it's enriching you, because we really worked hard to make sure that this would be something that by the time you left, you would feel inspired. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Carlita.
You're welcome. So again, we have a list of topics here that we'll just go through. Feel free to type into the chat any questions that you may have, and Michelle and I will tag team those responses. First and foremost, we wanted to remind you of the reporting requirements for your awards. So I'm not sure when your respective awards began, but certainly from the start date of the award, every award has an annual report that is due. And so in research.gov is where you will submit that annual report, and you will start to receive notifications, automatically generated notifications to your email. That email will go to you as the PI, as well as your co-PIs, and a representative from your sponsor programs office. It will be a notification to let you know that your report is due, and it will send you consistent reminders until it's done. So keep in mind that will happen automatically. As we talked about this briefly on yesterday, but in research.gov, there is a form that's an electronic form that's already compiled that has specified questions. It is the same series of questions for each report, for each award that you have. So if you are managing 2 awards, you have 2 reports and so on. So every award is certainly different. I definitely see the comment about the coworkers. So we welcome when you're showing, if you choose to share your screen and you have loved ones and loved pets nearby, we certainly understand that as well. And so please don't feel bad or anything that happens. We understand the context that we currently have. But the the annual report has a list of preset questions. And by and large, it's an opportunity for you to share what has happened over the given year. So it'll begin with what you intended to do. So it has you identify your objectives therein. But then as you progress through the report, it provides space for you to explain if there's any challenges, how you responded to those said challenges, if there were things that were directly related to the project themselves, if there were some institutional or infrastructure challenges that had to be mitigated and or overcome. It also provides you the opportunity to share highlights, any publications that may have come out, any results that you've probably started to generate that might inform the context of your project. It is exactly what it sounds like in terms of an annual report for you to reflect on what has happened over the year. And while Michelle said it yesterday, I thought I would just reiterate that there's nothing better than to, as the year goes on, keep a compilation of everything that has transpired over that time, because at times you can literally just copy and paste that right into the actual report. Do you want to add anything to that, Michelle?
No, I think you got it. I mean, unless they're and how do you want to do questions? Because we can probably wait or whatever. But
Yeah.
uh
For this specific topic, I did see one question that come through from Marie Hammond from ESU, and it says, could we speak about how to address the 9 months of work for the first report rather than the 12?
Okay. So bottom line is you report what you've done. I was in a situation where my last award, by the time it was implemented, it was maybe it was less than 9 months and it was time for the report. So what do? You report. And so we as the program officers, we understand your timing. And so but again, one of the things that worked well for me was that my evaluator said, no excuses, get something done. And so I encourage you to have that mindset. You may not have my evaluator, but get something done that shows that, look, I'm serious about making this work. Okay, I'll stop there.
Yeah, I was concerned about not getting enough done.
Well, year one is always that year where you're implementing, you're setting things up, right? And so we understand there's a startup time. So you're building your momentum. But year two, year three, we're looking to see activity, progress. And so that's when you get a nice, what I call the nice nasty note back in year 2 or 3, right? What you doing? You still starting up. We in year 4, you still starting up. That's not gonna work. So that's what I'll say. Thanks, Carly.
Sure. And I did want to kind of reiterate that your assigned program officer does receive a copy or a notification of your annual report, and we review them for that type of context to be able to follow up and engage with you if your report indicates something that might be worthy of follow up. And I think that there's some program officers that just make a good habit of reaching out, confirming that they've reviewed something, kind of giving you insight into what it is that they've observed. So just know that that is shared with your program officer and it is reviewed and approved. In some cases, if there are components that are missing or may not be outlined to the extent that might be informative, that very well may come back to you in a question of, can you elaborate more in this particular area?
Dr. Paige Anderson, can I ask a question?
Sure.
All right. I'm Mohammed Ahmed from North Carolina Central University. And thank you for joining as our program manager. We welcome you and look forward to working with you. I have a quick question. So I have an ongoing EIR in the third year, and I have a new TIP which started this fall. And TIP, as you know, are more, they're infusion projects, and the mine required a lot of purchasing and things of that nature. And the COVID related delays in purchasing and shipment, and it needed folks to come on campus and look at our facility and things like that, are naturally impacted by that. So we are certainly behind in purchasing and establishing and doing what we needed to do, just because there are restrictions of visitors on campus and all those, everything what we are experiencing related to COVID. What do you recommend? What are the considerations? How should we report those delays? I mean, we hope to keep catch up and do things in due time, but there's certainly adverse effects of this. And so how do we I just heard, no excuses. We need to do the work. Yes, I get it. I completely get it. We're trying to do as much as we can, but how do we report those things in terms of timeline, resources, what is happening? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think you report your experience. The reality is that all of us are aware that COVID certainly has adjusted all of our plans, right? We're not doing anything the way that we had set out to do. That said, it's also important to engage with various administrators at your institution to discuss what the challenges are that you're experiencing, to see if there can be any mitigation strategies put in place to facilitate your progress therein. And so I think it's a fine balance of identifying what those challenges are, but I think it's equally important to try to identify ways that you might be able to overcome those said challenges and move forward. So certainly we acknowledge it, but also encourage you to identify solutions to move forward.
Thank you, certainly will.
You're welcome.
Hi, Dr. Paige Anderson, Dr. Clavieu. By the way, Dr. Clavieu, you're very missed here at Hampton University. I just had a quick question with regards to things that we've been doing that are not necessarily related to the project that we received the award for. But how does NSF see, for example, if I'm collaborating with somebody in my department and that project actually is gaining traction, even though the direct objectives of my award haven't been doing as much progress as I should. I just want to see, like, how do you balance and how does the agency see this parallel advancements, and how do you report that? Is it something even that you considered reporting if it's a publication not related exactly to the award? So if you don't mind elaborating on that a little bit, that would be great.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's a great segue to another topic that we had entitled changes in the scope of the project, right? So we'll just make sure we easily transition there. And the first point to note is that changes in the scope should not significantly deviate from what you initially proposed, right? So you were awarded a project where you clearly outlined and articulated kind of goals and objectives. And certainly that is the expectation of the agency, that you will continue to proceed in that regard. That said, things happen, right? Things happen through the implementation, and it may, and changes do arise. The first thing that we recommend you do is contact your program officer before you confirm and go off and kind of veer off in a different direction. I think it's important that you reach out and discuss kind of the rationale for making those said changes and but doing so very early on in the process to be sure that those changes are justifiable, and that they still align in some senses to the major objective of the overall award. I think this is probably more important in the case of like the research initiation awards, those that are very discipline specific and focused in advancing the research, because those projects are very clear in the types of analysis, and particularly in the review, what those research questions are. For those that may be more institutional in nature, I think there is more observation where changes do happen, but it's certainly in the context of the annual report where you would articulate what was the challenge and or barrier and how did you implement some strategy to mitigate it.
Dr. Anderson, I'm
Thank
Dawn
you.
McLean with Jackson State. A quick question. So as a colleague said earlier about the COVID and supplies slowing down, what we've tried to done is trying to change our aims around so we continue working with the students. So certain things we said we were going to do this semester, we kind of flipped them and do them now and going to kind of push some things back later because we don't have the equipment and people can't come to campus to do trainings. So is that okay that we change some of our aims around the timelines?
It's certainly justifiable, certainly.
Okay.
You know, it's not, I'm not hearing any changes in the aims. I'm hearing that maybe your timeline in which you
Yeah.
choose to focus on at a certain time may adjust. And I would say that I think that that's appropriate. Michelle?
So yeah, I completely agree with everything that you said. There's some things that we need to consider as well, because I didn't want to give the impression that I'm saying risk your lives or do any such thing. I pray that's not what that you heard from me. What I'm saying is that there are creative ways to still keep the scope of your work intact and keep active. So, for example, I appreciate what you said, Carolina. There are activities, you might be in a writing activity or something like that. If there is some kind of relationship to whatever your project is, that's a good thing. Report on that, right? So you may be doing more writing, you may be doing some more virtual trainings. All of these activities, don't undermine these things as if they're insignificant. Keep a record of every activity that you have done with your awards. Now, with regard to Mohammed's comment about access to campus and so forth, we get it, because all of us, Carlita and I, we have co-workers at home too, and some of our other colleagues have family members who are older that they're taking care of. When I'm talking about co-workers, yeah, my husband, but then some people have young children who want to come and help you while you're typing or teaching or whatever it is. We call them, between us, we call them co-workers, right? And so you're managing all of these activities. And so you're trying to figure out, how do I get all this done? At some point in this conversation, and I don't want to take away from the schedule that Carlita has laid out, but you're going to hear about no cost extensions. We understand you're going to have to extend the length of time that you originally needed to do this project in order to get the activities done. And you have 3, your PAPG explains about it, but I'm going to stop because I want Carlita to continue in the vein that she's going, if that's okay.
Sure. Thank you, Michelle. And that is the next topic, which is no cost extension. So we talked about this in the business meeting yesterday, but particularly in the context that we're describing here, we understand that more time may be necessary. We understand that we don't know how long our current state will be in place. But with the framework and the policies and procedures that we do have outlined in the PAPG, we wanted to bring to your attention that you do have the opportunity to request no cost extensions. Okay, you have up to 3. They are typically provided on an annual basis, right? So requesting that no cost extension would be, your first request would be for a year, and then you would revisit that no cost extension request subsequent to the next deadline. We outlined yesterday that typically it's in your best interest to identify and make the request for a no cost extension within 3 to 4 months before your award is scheduled to expire or finish. And so if you are in the first year, for example, of your project, now is likely not, but in your, let's give context. So if you're in the first year of your project and your project is for 3 years, now is likely not the time for you to be considering a no cost extension, right? This is the first year. We've talked about in normal times that it would be an opportunity to develop the infrastructure for implementation. And so things would typically move a bit slower. But in the subsequent years, while starting up, you will be able to make a bit more progress. But clearly, if where we are continues, I know each of your institutions have responded to COVID differently. If you find that over time and as you continue to progress throughout the project and the time comes where you're near the end of your funding mechanism, that is when you would consider whether or not you needed a no cost extension and make that formal request. I wanted to reiterate that it's also through research.gov where you would request that no cost extension. There's a portal. It will require the approval and the signature authority of your sponsor programs office. So be aware of that. Make sure you notify them of your request. But it is again an electronic interface where there's a box that provides you the space to write a rationale and justification for that no cost extension. The first one is it's virtually approved kind of automatically. We're made aware that that's what it is that you intend to do. However, the request for the second and or the third no cost extension will likely occur a bit more review and scrutiny to determine that process. It is equally important, it's not necessarily listed in the topics that I have here, but I think it's important to state that no cost extension truly means no cost. So it's important to, as you are implementing the project, to make sure that you are utilizing the resources based on the said allocations that you've been given. And if you find that through some reason that you still have resources available, certainly they would be available for you to use throughout the no cost extension period, but this would not be the opportunity to expect and or request additional support in that time period. It likely would not be available. There's a question.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Yes, good morning.
Good afternoon, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but what I think I hear you saying is if you're in the first year of your grant and you're experiencing challenges due to COVID or any other challenges, that you should not say anything right now, but that you should just wait until the end of your grant period and then ask for a no cost extension to mitigate those challenges. Is that correct?
I wanted to emphasize you should articulate those said challenges in your annual report.
Okay.
Right, as part of the update. But in terms of the no cost extension, you would be thinking about that as the award is set to expire.
I see. So I have a question related to that. My team is extremely full of high achievers. One of them is on the call, Dr. Stitt, and we are in from Winston-Salem. Hi, Dr. Stitt. We are in, I don't know, I think about month 6 or 7, and we realize that we are facing several challenges. We are a research center grant, so it's 4 institutions and 5 PIs. So the overlay of COVID presents several challenges that we didn't expect. And we kind of want to do something about them now. And so is it safe to say that I guess we want to do something about that now, and that causes frustration because we're very limited in what we can do. So does that mean what you're saying is that we can kind of ease up a little bit on our own, I guess, self-inflicted frustration and just report what we're experiencing and let the chips fall where they may. And I say that as a high achiever, meaning we're going to do all that we can, and we have been doing all that we can. But there's some situations where we can't fix it, right? And we don't have solutions. And so it becomes very frustrating. So our first inclination is to contact you and ask for more funding to deal with some mitigating solutions that we have ideas about. And so that was the nature of my question yesterday. So this is kind of longer than I anticipated talking. Trying to play with my 3-year-old nephew at the same time. You can hear him in the background. So yeah, I hope I'm making sense. I'm going to stop here and let you respond if I'm comprehensible.
Sure. No, I think that the question is well received and very much appropriate. I think it's important I think it's an excellent example that you're working with your colleagues across institutions to try to identify what the challenges are and how you might work together to identify solutions. So kudos to you and your team for being proactive in that regard, even 6 months in. I think that will prove you well. As you continue with the implementation, as we discussed yesterday, you might find that there might be justification, if you will, to identify solutions to overcome said barriers that might require additional resources, right? That would be the basis for how you would pursue supplemental funding, provided that it is available. So I think the way you've thought about it and how you're working through potential solutions it certainly makes sense and is appropriate. I don't want you to add additional stress, right? It's already a stressful time, but in your efforts to mitigate challenges, I think that that strategy is very much appreciated. Michelle, I'm not as familiar with the research centers and the coordination, if you will, between various institutions. And so did you have any additional context, particularly in that regard?
So this is brand new in terms of us even having some kind of hold, right, on how we mitigate the challenges. Dr. Hatley and Dr. Stitt would have been in the second or third round of I think second of centers, which means there is no real set of answers, right, on how you navigate the differences between institutions and to accomplish the goals that you have. And so you must have presented an convincing argument in your proposal for the reviewers to say, yeah, they're ready, right? Nobody anticipated COVID, but I said it yesterday. I don't know if you were in the session, I'll say it again. We come from an awesome set of people who know how to, Dr. Hatley, I don't know if you're West Indian. I thought I heard something, but who know how to turn your hand and make fashion. In other words, turn your hand and turn something that was supposed to work against you into an opportunity. And so we'll be patient as you work through this. But again, we need you to keep us informed. And I hear you saying that you're hard on yourselves. I would hope that you use the energy to create answers as opposed to beating yourself up over what you can't do. and find where you can accomplish some things. So that's my encouragement / challenge to you at this point.
Thank you. Well received.
Maybe I have a question. I have a question for you guys.
Sure.
This is Grant Wangila from University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. Since you have already talked about the challenges all of us are going through, especially in the first year of funding with this issue of COVID, the question is, I know we are working hard, we are going to present something, but the question is, do we allow external evaluators to do their work on what we have done, or what are we going to do about that? That's what I just wanted to know.
So with regard to the external evaluator, I think that we could agree that every project is different. And what you include as part of your evaluation plan may in fact be predicated on certain activities, certain data points where it needs to be collected, having IRB approval. All of these components really impact evaluation, and particularly in the first year, ensuring that that infrastructure is in place first is we'll spend time there. We'll do the evaluation component. In my experience, certainly good justice for ensuring that those components are clear, standardized, and in place, if you will, for the evaluator. And so, you know, without knowing the context for which the evaluation is happening, I don't know that I could offer additional insight, but I think that also being in continuous engagement with your evaluator, such that they're aware of where you are, maybe what you're experiencing, and then coordinating what a plan would be to continue, and kind of what their needs are in that context, I think would be appropriate as well.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So I saw a question in the chat with regards to budget, and I want to segue to that next topic. To be honest, this is the last topic that we formally had in terms of updates, and so the next section will be question and answer. So keep that in mind. But with regard to any budget changes, we thought it important to continue to emphasize that your budgetary allocation has been provided based on the line items identified in the grant. With regard to participant support cost, there should not be any changes to the resources that have been allocated specifically to participant support cost. That is outlined in the PAPG, and so we want to make sure we continue to reiterate that point. That said, any other budgetary changes that might present themselves, or at least comes under your consideration, we strongly recommend that you broach this conversation and begin this conversation with your Office of Sponsor Programs. Every institution has their indirect cost amounts, and how budgets shift may often in times impact what that looks like towards the institution. And so we strongly urge you to begin those conversations with your Sponsor Programs office. It certainly has been our experience that PIs want approval, if you will, from program officers to make those said changes, and certainly a conversation can be facilitated, but the budgetary changes particularly should be vetted through your Office of Sponsor Programs. Michelle?
Dr. Paige Anderson, good morning. Can I ask a simple question?
Sure.
Thank you for the clarification. Regarding the participant support, you have their stipend or maybe travel. Travel is a sizable amount for if you have 10, 15 students, and then there will be at least $20,000, $25,000. I don't think the students can travel this year till the vaccination is completed. And what do we do with that kind of a money? You said that, I know, I'm in the sponsor research, we cannot touch even with the 10-foot-4 participant support. Can we submit a request to you whether we can use, we don't want that money to go back to NSF and then, because these students are just here for this year, they are out of this program, in my program, for example, next year, I cannot use the money that was allocated for them for this year. Can we submit a request? We can use that money for something that is going to be useful for the project because it is under participant support.
Go ahead, Michelle.
So if you are going to use those funds to still support your participants, then there is no issue. As long as it's benefiting the student, then there is no issue because you may not have been using it in travel. You can use it for something else. It is still under this huge category that we call participant support. So it doesn't, that's not our concern. You still have flexibility within that realm. It's when you start mixing what some people call light items or account items, right? Where indirect cost has been assessed and no indirect cost has been assessed. That's generally the concern. The second part, which is probably more important on the NSF side, is that this particular program is one of them that is very protective of funds that go to students because we are in human development. We really don't like the term human resource development, but that's between me and you. But bottom line, we are developing human beings. And so when you start moving funds away from students, we've already said you don't have to charge IDC on it. Then you're bringing a whole bunch of attention to yourself that you may not want to bring. Can it be done?
Yes, it can be done.
Yes,
The one
it can
option,
be done.
yeah,
It can be done.
yeah,
But what I'm saying, Dr. Shetty, is that even though it can be done, we're going to ask you to explore as many other options as possible before you take money away from students. There are students on everybody's campus that need some help right now. Everybody. And there are different ways that we can do that.
It's not a problem not to take the money away from the, I understand. We have two options, either increase the number of students participating in the program. That's one option we have. Another option we have is increase the stipend that we are, for example, I'm planning to give 4,500, I can make it 5,000, that's not a problem. If we want to increase the number of students participating, then I have to look for more faculty to mentor them, and I have to pay for those faculty. See, it's a chain reaction. You touch one area, it is going to lead to another area. So I just want to make sure that are there any options? We really want to spend the money for the student travel, but you know, last year, not even one. Even students who wanted to go off campus, they didn't want to go. They got good offers, they don't want to travel at all. So the money was sitting there. So it may be a problem for others too.
And we can continue the conversation offline for your specific case, but understand that all the options that you've provided, those are ones that you don't even need our approval for. Increasing the amount, you know, if you want to increase the number of students, let's say you got more faculty, I know that's hard right now, but increasing the amounts, that's fine too. There may be ways to engage students that don't necessarily equate to increasing more faculty members, mentors, you know, but that's your project. And we don't want to prescribe how you do it. We're just saying, please do your due diligence to not bring attention to yourself that could cause some issue down the road.
Dr. Kalavil.
I want to make sure before we move to your question, there's two persons that have had their hand up for a while. I want to make sure I acknowledge them, and then we'll come back around. Let's go with Anna first, and then Edward next.
Okay. You're muted.
You're muted, Anna.
Just as a follow-up question
No,
with the
sir,
Dr.
sir.
Shetty.
No, sir, please hold on. We're going to
Okay,
allow
thank
Anna to
you.
go first. I'm sorry.
All right, thank you. I have actually opposite problem because now when I hire my PRT leaders, I was intend to give them only 10 hours a week, but now because we have to do virtually and we have to provide more PRT study sessions, so I'm spending more money than what I asked for. So this is my question. Can I spend my salary moving into their account and hire more students and give them more money? Can I transfer? Because right now at our school, my account is different from participant account. We have two separate accounts. So I don't know how to, move from my account to like a separate account to theirs. Can I do that? Like move my salary to their participant stipend?
So, and I really hope that these monetary questions, I hope they come back up when you come to the DGA session in the next hour, okay? But in general, I'm going to say yes, but it depends on how your institution manages funds. So your institution may have some internal stipulations that go outside of our jurisdiction. As long as it is not a violation of NSF, the institution can do what they want to do. So yes, in general, we've given you one award. The only stipulation is that you keep IDC with IDC and non-IDC. And when I'm saying for the new people, IDC indirect costs. IDC with IDC, non-IDC with non-IDC. There are two non-IDC lines. Those are students and equipment. And so that's the way that it's organized. And you have movement, and you can actually move IDC funds into non-IDC funds.
Okay.
It's taking it out. That's the issue when it's students. And so that's the issue on our side. Now, I'll also throw this in for you. If you want to take items that you've charged IDC on, and you say, I want to move it to support my students, your university may lose those IDC funds. And so now your issue is not with us, it's with your administration.
Okay.
So you have to decide, okay, are you going with the Saints today or with the Kansas City Chiefs? Decide which fight you're going to fight and go from there. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Let me add this one. I know what she's talking because we face this problem. There are two types of funds for the PI. One is release time. Another one is the summer.
Yeah,
she can transfer the summer money for the student with the permission of the university, but not the release time funds because university has hired somebody in her place already, either adjunct or somebody. So we have to be very careful in that.
Sure.
Thank you.
And I want to remind everyone that you can still continue to use the chat component to offer perspective and insight. We want to make sure that we allocate time accordingly. Edward, you were next, and then we'll go, excuse me if I say your name incorrectly. Is it from Fayetteville State? What's your name?
Yeah, Boj Gautam.
Boj. We'll go Boj, and then we'll go Prakar.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Okay, so Edward.
Wait, Boj, Edward, I think was next.
Yes, I had a question. Yes, so it's kind of just a piggyback as well in that regard. So just slightly different question though. So if I want to use some of my participant support funds as incentives or gift cards for participants and some of my who are participating in some of my assessments, even though I didn't propose it in my budget justification originally, would I be allowed to do so? Because I see the PAPPG says I have to list it up front in my budget justification. So would I be allowed to do so or not if I decide to? If I have extra funds left over that could be used for that?
Short answer, talk to us offline because we need more details, and I don't want for us to give you some answer and we find out we might need to amend that answer. So let's talk offline with more detail.
Gotcha. Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Boj.
Okay, my turn. Okay, thank you. So, because I had like the 2 students each year should go for the summer research to my mentor's lab, but due to pandemic, last year they were not able to, and this year, hopefully they will. The question here is because most of my money was for their lodging as well as the meals for 10 weeks during the summer. So now, because I have the money, because students were not participating last year, can I use to hire like the more students and mentor them here at FSU?
Most certainly.
Okay, because right now I was thinking because I want to mentor more students, although I originally wrote 2 students per year, but right now students are emailing, okay, I want to join the lab. Then I was telling, okay, I will, but I wanted to make sure it means because the money that goes for meals and lodging, I would like to utilize for their stipend. And I just wanted to make sure from you, okay, whether we have to notify NSF, I just notified our sponsor research, just wanted to make sure, whether I'm, putting the money on the same, correct place. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, that's fine. You can go ahead and do that. And then of course, like my colleague said, make sure you keep records of everyone that you have mentored or who has benefited from the funds. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you put that in your report. And I mean, for those of you who've done the report, you see they ask for a list for everybody that's benefited or has worked on the project, and you've got to list all their information. So please do that. Let me throw something out for all of you to consider, because while we're talking about acknowledging the grant, remember every time you go out or give a talk or anything pertaining to this, please be acknowledging your award number, because we ask that question as well. And the more publicity you give NSF, the more we like you. I'll let you read between the lines. I'll stop there.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah.
You're quite welcome. Carlita, you want me to keep? Oh, okay.
Yes. I think the next order was Bakar, and then we'll go with Rupak. If you've already spoken, if you could remove your hand raised, that would be great.
All right, thank you. And hello, Michelle and Kalita.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you, yes. I have to go back to this question. It's about no cost extension. I know it was discussed earlier, but I had to leave to go to my session, and I just came back, so I don't know what was discussed. With no cost extension, what is the time frame between the report and when you can apply for it? And also, how long does it take for it to be approved?
Okay, so with regard to no cost extensions, you would do that about the minimum 4 weeks, between 4 to 6 weeks. So say 6 weeks out from the end of your award. So let's say this is your last year, and your award, your project officially ends maybe about June, right? That's when you would be putting in your report. Then you want to make your request by the end of April for a no cost extension. The first no cost extension is called a grantee no cost extension. And you put in your justification for needing this no cost extension, and you put it in through notifications and requests. It used to be Fastlane, now it's research.gov that you put that in. And it does not require our approval. We just review it. And so you get a freebie, if you will. Should you need a second one, then your program officer will review it. And then should you need a third one, then we have some serious scrutinization. And that scrutinization can cause us to say yes or no. So, so understand the very first one is a freebie. It's as long as you put it in, it's just about guaranteed. The only thing we do on our end is review it and acknowledge reviewing it.
Okay, thank you.
You're quite welcome. Rupak, I think you were next, sir.
Yes. Good afternoon, Dr. Claywell
Good
and
afternoon.
Dr. Paige Adamson. Uh, Good to see you here. And I have a quick question. So I'm diverting away from the budget. So I'm and piggyback on your previous comment. So if we are doing some publication or we started doing some publication unrelated to the project, for example, since I had summertime, I did one educational paper which is unrelated to the project. So should I cite NSF into that because I used my time, but I'm not changing the scope of my original project. That's remained the same, but I had some time because of the COVID. I wrote another additional paper, educational paper. So should I
Could you,
acknowledge NSF in that?
now, where did you get your funding from for that particular paper? And you don't have to answer it publicly, but if you had some funding of any kind that supported it, then I would acknowledge NSF in that. If NSF had nothing to do with that, then you don't acknowledge NSF.
It's just
So
the summertime, I
summer
think.
is summer is
And I didn't have. Go ahead.
Did NSF pay for your summer salary while you were working on that
Yes.
paper? Then go ahead and acknowledge
Yes.
it. It can't hurt you.
Okay.
And a colleague told me this when I was a junior professor. I mean, he was awesome. This was in Baton Rouge. He invited me to give a talk at his institution. I'll just tell you, it was at LSU. And I was just as green as could be, didn't know, this from that. And I was working on my acknowledgement page and I was just thanking students and one person. And he said, Michelle, I know you have a lot of grants. And the grant that he said, what about this? It was a small $5,000 grant that got me started from our business and industry cluster. He said, could you have started anything without them? And I said, not a thing, because we didn't have startup funds. He said, tell him thank you. And so every dollar I got, whether it was 5,500, a gift from, sometimes we get these equipment, I said, thank you. So you'll notice when I give talks, my acknowledgement page is full and running over because I say thank you to all. Don't despise small beginnings. I said that yesterday and I'll say it again. Say thank you. And so the time, something that we don't think about. You're having a paycheck to work on that. Who is paying for that? That means that we've contributed to your project. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You're quite welcome. Baj, do you still have another question? I see the hand still up.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, awesome.
So just as a follow-up question from Rupak. So because I'm also getting like the course release, and then of course my primary projects are there, my grant number will be there, right? But if I'm collaborating with someone and putting some of my time during like the fall and spring semester where I have the course release, so I can still put the like the RIF funding on that as well, correct?
Yes. And if someone and if they're the lead and you've contributed your time to their project, you can insist, you must acknowledge the award that allowed me to assist you.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
So it works both ways. It's not just about, well, I guess, for me, without you, could they have done what they did?
Exactly.
That means they need your money. And so where'd your money come from?
Because the NSF give me the release time.
HRD number. Make sure it's on there or it's not ready for publication.
Okay.
And then you get to report that on your annual report. See, there are tricks for making sure your annual report looks fat and fluffy. Make sure that you use these opportunities. Don't ignore them. Carla Sue and Carlita, I'm turning it back to you.
Hello.
Hey.
Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Savannah State University. I'm co-PI working with Dr. Chetty, PI of our new grant. He just mentioned a while ago that we have travel funds and it might not be used on these students in the first year, and they might not be in the program in the second year. What about these students will be documented? So what about if Once we're free to travel and we still have those funds, could we still fund the traveling of those students that were in there in the first year? That's another option.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, you may.
Yes, so thank you for the question. I want to make sure that I certainly acknowledge where we are in terms of our timing. We're at 12:54 at 1 p.m. After we close out of this session, we want to direct you to our session with the Office of the Division on Grants and Agreements. Many of the questions that you've raised here would also be appropriate in that context. For those of you who have inquired in the chat privately about international support, that would be appropriate in that session. So please make sure that you get those questions addressed in that particular session. I also wanted to make sure that I reiterated the point of, in all of these cases, make the habit of reaching out to your program officer. There was one instance that came up in the chat about whether or not your SRO would allow you to do something. We do understand that sometimes having that conversation and being able to give context and identify areas in the PAPG that specifically make the case for what's permissible and may not be permissible, we can certainly provide you with that language, but we also encourage you to peruse those sections of the PAPG to make sure that you're well within the parameters of what's allowable, as it pertains to budgetary changes. We also want to emphasize to be mindful of where you are in the timing of your project. I think Michelle mentioned this yesterday, but if you're thinking about hiring people, but you know you only have 6 months left on your award, that's something that you might want to consider either in addressing, making clear to the person that you're attempting to impact, but also with your sponsored programs office and any other administrator about onboarding persons in such a short period of time with funding, in terms of what the funding source will allow. So I just wanted to make sure that, we just highlighted all of these points and giving you, hopefully we've used this time to where we could answer many of your questions. If we have not answered all of them, we want to invite you to certainly follow up with an email and or phone call. All three of us, Michelle, Emmanuel, and myself, are certainly available to you to help you along in the process. But we want to thank you for giving us your time and attention today, and certainly allow you a bit more time to transition to the next session. If there are any burning questions, if you raise your hands, Rupark, I'm not sure if you still have a question with your hand raised. If not, Mohammed.
Hi, thank you. First of all, thank you for really hosting this. This is really nice. And I just want to give a suggestion, and I don't know where to send it, so I'm just going to tell you. So as I told you, I've had HBCU EIR in the past, and this is my first year of a TIP. For my EIR grant, I never received an invite to attend this meeting in the past 2 years. I only got it this year because I am a new TIP receiver. I know that those EIRs are managed through independent program offices, but nonetheless, I see them as part of HBCU program because that's how we applied, but somehow the EIR folks never get invited. So I just want to, bring that to your attention that EIR are your family, and hopefully they can be invited in the future as an EIR, because then I cannot highlight that project here on this venue, but they need to be because, they're your family.
Thank you, Mohammed. We agree. You certainly are members of this family, and we'll be sure to heed that recommendation. Thank you. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and we will see you in the next session. Thanks so much.